I have failed a lot. So let's talk about it. Failure is such a taboo topic of conversation, regardless of what it is you failed at. Failures within a relationship, failures in your career, failures within your friendships. No one wants to talk about all of the shit that's gone wrong in their life, because with that conversation comes a big fat chunk of shame and embarrassment. But the easiest way to take power away from shame is by talking about it. So let's do that. And hopefully you've never been in the same position as me with any of the failures that I'm about to talk through. But if you have, welcome to the club. It sucks. But I'm gonna tell you how to respond to failure to ensure it leads you to success in the future at the end of this video. So stick around for that. Okay, let's go.
1 hour later.
Okay, boys and girls, we ready to hear some failures? Can't believe I'm putting this on the internet, to be honest. Right, so I thought, why not just make a big fat video talking through all of the biggest failures I've had to navigate since I started my career in the coaching industry. Because let me tell you, there's been a fair few, to say the least. So let's dive in. But before we do, I'm just gonna let you know that if you've come across this page because you're looking for some support with your fitness goals and you need someone to give you like a strong, obvious starting point, then what I'm gonna suggest you do is start with our 4-week free coaching template, the link for which you can find in the description box below. Okay. Now we're gonna get stuck in. So, first big failure, we're running it right back to the start. I'm finished uni, I got my degree in professional dance and musical theatre. We went into COVID, I got my PT qualifications, and I thought I could do it all. I was picking up auditions, self-tapes, I was doing commercials, I was doing bits and pieces of what was available to me during COVID in my performer work. And then I was also building up an in-person PT business once gyms reopened. First big fat failure I came up against at the start of my coaching career was believing that I could do it all and have it all. I was thinking, oh, this will be a dream. I can do auditions and I can go and do work in the West End or go on UK tours, and then I can just pick up clients when I'm home in between contracts, or work with people for 3 months, go on a tour for 6 months, and just assume that that client will come back to me again after 6 months, and they won't have gone to a different PT. They won't have found somebody else to fill that gap. That's how naive I was. And then I found online coaching, and I thought, oh, this is going to be even more of a dream because I can go and do my work. I can go to the West End, and I can do my client check-ins in between shows. Fantastic. Obviously not. I was fucking naive. But that wasn't the failure. The naivety wasn't the failure. We are all naive at the start of big journeys and big changes and big transitions in our lives. We are all fucking naive. The failure in this situation was not jumping into my fitness career with 2 feet the minute I realized that this is the path I wanted my life to go down. I spent way too long clinging on to both camps, clinging on to the performing world and clinging on to the fitness world at the same time, meaning that I was never fully immersed in either. There was a point very early on in my fitness career when that started taking off that I realized, oh shit, this is what I want to be doing. But I'd spent my entire life, from the age of 3 to 22, my entire life's trajectory was heading towards the stage. Every single person I knew in my life knew that I was going to be a performer. And I was terrified to cut ties with the performing industry at that point because I was terrified of letting people down or terrified of what people might have thought. Even though in that moment I knew that what I was building within the fitness industry was providing me with more passion on a daily basis than performing was. So my first biggest failing was not going all in on that goal earlier. If I'd cut ties with the performing industry earlier on in my coaching career, my business, my financials, my success rates, my experience would all be significantly further along by this point. Okay, second big failing, and this is the one that you've all been waiting for. My biggest financial failing since starting my coaching career, and that came in the form of a business mentorship. Now, I've had 3 business mentors in my time in this industry. The first mentorship I profited from in value against the investment. That one was great. So my investment went to good use there. Once I'd hit the ceiling of my capabilities within that mentorship, I got magpie syndrome, I got shiny object syndrome, I started looking elsewhere, and the algorithm fed me a mentorship that was offering what most people on paper would consider a dream in terms of the financials that he was promising and the geographical freedom and the lifestyle that he was offering. It all seemed like a dream that on paper most people would go for. And where I am now looking back in that moment, I realized that that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted from my career. But again, I was naive, I was young, saw me lose a lot of money, and I gained nothing from the experience. Not a single transferable skill, not any kind of long-term impact on my business or my own experience and expertise. Not a thing. If anything, it made life a hell of a lot worse for a while, both in terms of my financial insecurity, as well as my total lack of business growth and total stagnation of business growth, as well as my mental health, which got trodden on, stamped on, vomited on, shat on throughout that entire experience. So I had a good ladder to climb to get my mental health back into a good place after that experience. It completely threw me in terms of my connection to what I was doing, to the industry that I was in. So much self-doubt, so much doubt as to whether I'd made the right choice, whether I should have left the performing industry. And that all came as a result of that one huge, monumental financial failure on my part. We're gonna come back to that in a second. But moving on to point number 3, or failure number 3. My next failure is hiring too early. I brought another coach into my business way too early, way earlier than necessary. There were a few reasons why. Number 1, I thought I wanted to expand into a sector that, looking back, I didn't want to expand into, at least not in the way that I almost forced the business to do back then. I wanted to move into the mum space. And it's funny because right now I'm working with so many beautiful mums, women who are new mums, mums with 3 to 7 year olds, mums with teenagers, mums with grown adult children. But I don't market myself as a coach who works with mums. It just so happens that the women I'm working with who have the goals that I do market myself to offer also just so happen to have children. But back then I wanted to expand into the mum space. So I hired somebody who her passion was working with mums because she was also a mum. And honestly, my business didn't need a second coach at that point. I wasn't at the point where I needed to expand beyond my own means. It wasn't necessary. So I spent so much time stressing and worrying and pouring more effort than was necessary into the business beyond my own means. Financially, it wasn't benefiting me at all. If anything, it was hindering me. I think one of the other reasons was the image. It was cool to look like you needed a second coach. It was cool to look like the business was expanding at the rate that required a second coach. And honestly, it didn't need it. Yeah, that's something that I've always felt a bit of shame around talking about it, because that's what happens when you make decisions that you look back on and think, shouldn't have done that. Failure number 4. This one might sound a little bit vague, but there is a point behind it, so stay with me. Following the crowd has been one of my biggest failures for quite a large chunk of my life, to be honest. I know I'm only talking about failures within my coaching career, but honestly, looking back in childhood, secondary school, teenage years, I followed the crowd like my life was tethered to it. I struggled to follow my gut. I struggled to think for myself. And that kind of seeped into the first few years of my coaching career, because for the first couple of years my coaching business kind of looked like everybody else's. And when you're already in such a saturated market, yes, following everybody else feels like the safest option, but you don't gain anything from following the crowd. You don't gain inspiration from following the crowd. You don't gain momentum from following the crowd. If anything, following the crowd does nothing but slows you down and causes stagnation. Imagine walking forward in a pack of people versus being in your own lane solo, but being able to run. That's how I felt. I felt like I was in the middle of this pack of people, and I knew that this wasn't where I belonged, but I was terrified to leave that pack, leave the herd, and follow my own path. So I built a business that looked near enough identical to 90% of what was already on offer. And when you're in such a saturated market, if you're not offering something unique, you're gonna sink. I didn't properly clock onto that until a couple of years ago. And then failure number 5, the amount of times I have failed my clients since I started this line of work. The list goes on and on. I don't wanna go too deep into how I failed my clients. All I know is that I have never made the same mistake twice. And that statement can be circled back to all the other points I have made in this video, going back to the big financial failing, that experience has actually now impacted how I sell my coaching nowadays. I don't want to sell them a dream. I don't want to sell them easy fat loss or easy running progress or easy muscle development, because none of it is easy. I want clients to come into Strength 360 understanding that this shit is hard work. Regardless of the goal, it is going to require hard work. I want them to embrace that idea before they enter our world. And because that's how we market ourselves now, we do entice the kind of client who is willing to work hard. And they're going to get the best results. I learned from the mistake, I learned from the failure, and it has now had an overwhelmingly positive impact on my life because I went through that experience. Going back to my first point of wanting it all and not jumping in when I realized what my passion was, from taking so fucking long deciding what path I wanted to pursue, I have now grown into someone who gets really fucking clear on her goals and pursues them with the energy of a fucking lion. If I want it, I'm gonna go after it, regardless of the opinions of others. Because also, side note, everyone's gonna have an opinion, no matter what you do. So you may as well just fuck them off from the get-go. Going back to the hiring point, hiring too early. From that experience, I learned what I wanted the process of hiring to look like in order for it to sit with me in a way that worked. Enter my golden girl, Kath. When Kath joined Strength 360, it was at a time when the business needed a second coach in order to expand and continue helping women without liquidating the service. We made it so that it worked for both of us and both of our timeframes with where we were in our lives. And the same approach is going to happen when we look to hire again in the near future. And then finally, circling back to following the crowd. About 2 years ago, I had a big fat epiphany. I was so tired of being a sheep in a herd. I felt like I was on, you know, that zebra crossing in the middle of Japan, I think it is. It's like the biggest zebra crossing in the world, and at any one time, like thousands of people are crossing the road. I felt like I was one of those 1,000 people on that road with it, but the road was the coaching industry. And I wanted Strength 360 to stand out. I wanted Strength 360 to be a big red fucking giraffe in the middle of that road. No matter where you looked, you could see that big red giraffe. It towered above everyone. I wanted to be the coaching service that women came to when they wanted a slice of every single pie. They wanted to get lean, they wanted to get stronger, they wanted to get faster, they wanted to feel shit hot on the beach when they go on holiday, and they weren't happy to settle for just one of those pieces of that pie. They were greedy, they wanted everything. That's what I want Strength 360 to be. And Strength 360 only looks the way it does now because 2 years ago, I learned my lesson. I dropped the herd mentality and I became the big red fucking giraffe. If there's one thing you're gonna take away from this video, it's to learn from your failures. Embrace them, accept them, talk about them, release the shame that comes with them, but learn from them. Because every failure is just pointing you towards success, whether it's obvious at the time or not. And 90% of the time, it's not gonna be fucking obvious. It's going to feel shit. But without wanting to sound like too much of a cringe face, the sun gets the fuck up every day, regardless of what happened the day before, and so the fuck do you. And on that note, tell me your failures. Go in the comments and say something that you have considered one of the biggest failures of your life and what you've learned from it and how it has had a positive impact on your life in hindsight. And if you liked this video, if you appreciated the honesty, then give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you on the next one.